All right, folks, hello and welcome to the Community Curation podcast. I am your host, the Gothic Storyteller, filmmaker, podcaster, Twitch streamer. And with us today is one of the pillars of leadership here in the community, member of the Twitch Latin Guild and Pride Guild, and a member of the stream team, the Fae and Fauna. We got yours truly, NikkiHurray. Welcome in, everyone. I had it. I had almost all of it and everything. But welcome in,
Perfect.
Nikki. We're so happy to have you here
I
for
am
the
so happy to be
podcast.
here. Thank you.
I've been again super nervous as always to get ready to start this. Our wonderful Nikki has picked some of the most interesting, imaginative feature films here. A lot of these that I actually had just now started to see right before stream, and some that I was able to revisit and realize just how very dark and witty they can be. Um, but before we jump into those films, we're going to get to know a little bit of who NikkiHurray is. Nikki, who are you?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I am a variety streamer here on Twitch. I've been streaming for about 4 years now, and we do anything from gaming to art making when I can get around to it, to a lot of chatting. I am also an anthropology student, so on our streams we tend to do a lot of like educational stuff. I've got dogs and I love them to bits, and I've got plants and I love my plants, and I have a lot of varying interests and a lot of varying things. But ultimately, I'm just kind of a quirky, anxious person who's doing her best online.
And you said anthropology student. How did you fall into that? What
Yeah.
niche or what's your origin story of how you fall into that?
Ooh, my origin story. Yeah, I think that when I was growing up, I actually thought that people were less interesting than animals. And so I was very obsessed with the idea of like, I love animals and like, fuck people, who cares? But if you know anything about anthropology, anthropology is the study of humans, humanity, and also just like hominins, our ancestry in all kinds of contexts. And so, um, over the course of my life, especially in my early 20s, I did a lot of soul searching. I became a yoga instructor, and I just developed this really intense love for helping others, for community, for developing that. I was also bullied as a kid, so it really felt nice to get into a space that was like very welcoming. And the pandemic happened and I stopped teaching yoga for my own like personal reasons, but my love for people never really went away. And I really wanted to go back to school. I had gone to school originally for art. I was going to go for emerging media, and I dropped out due to like a breakup and everything else. And in getting back into college, or wanting to go back to college, I decided I wanted to do something more sciencey, and social science was it. I mean, it kind of, I looked into it one day just to see like, what kind of degrees are out there for me. And then anthropology stuck out. And honestly, it has been the most rewarding experience. I initially, and I still sort of feel this way, thought that I wanted to pursue anthropology to pursue folklore and mythology, because that
Mm.
is an storytelling is an inherent part of the human experience. But I still don't really know where to go with it yet. But that is definitely one of my like greater interests. I love how we tell stories, why we tell stories, why myths exist, and how they kind of shape our culture. So yeah, it's kind of the origin story of that.
God, and it took this long just for us to collaborate. Someone that's
I
into
know.
folklore and everything, and then like the writer here, and I'm all like, where the fuck has she been? Like,
Yeah,
oh my god.
absolutely.
So like, I'm not all too informed into that. So like, also too with anthropology, does that also go into like archaeology, kind of in the sense of like, uh, studying mummies in Egypt or some of the stuff like the ruin, maybe not too much the ruins, but the cultures and everything from like the Mayans and whatnot. Is that kind of in that, or is that a totally different field?
No, absolutely. You're spot on. So,
Okay.
anthropology, especially here in the States, is a subdiscipline endeavor. Anthropology covers archaeology, cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and then physical or biological anthropology. And archaeology kind of can go into any of those. You can kind of interchange it. So, yeah, archaeology, mummies. A part of what I love learning about is, when I said mythologies and folklore, it's also like religion,
Hmm.
because a lot of religions for ancient people were, for us, they might be like myth now, but
Yeah.
they were inherent beliefs. These were the things that they like lived and breathed and did like base their entire lives on. And so, yeah, it's all encompassing.
Okay, okay. I was like interested because I'm like the way you're describing it's like mummies, mummies. Is she like
Yeah.
interested in like so many?
Yeah, trust me.
It felt to me in my brain, it's like that's a loaded, dumb question, but we're just gonna throw it out there and we're gonna see how badly she shoots it down.
No, actually,
um,
I'm going to elevate it. I love talking about dead stuff. I actually took a course in anthropology called, I think it was like anthropology of the dead. It was mummies, vampires, and
oh,
something. It was a course so specific to pop culture and um, mythology, and oh, it was brilliant. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I gotta pick your brain on the vampires one because
Mm,
there is like a lot, especially when Nosferatu was coming out, and a lot of people were
mm,
like, well, like vampires of this myth, and I was like, well, the one that I
mm,
know that was the earliest, I cannot remember the name of the country because it no longer exists. It's another country, but that seemed to have
mm-hmm.
happened a lot for Europe at that time. But
Yeah.
there was like this one story about this one guy who was apparently an evil man. He was a very bitter man, and he died, and he came back, and it's kind of like the start of the folklore of the vampire, and how they had to like stake him in the chest, and then they had to cut the head off, and they had this whole ritual of how to do it. And I'd seen Nosferatu, and I was like, "Fucking Eggers does his homework." Yes, he always does his homework, but like I like look at this, so now I definitely gotta pick your brain on vampires later. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
so you mentioned you've gone back to college and everything, and you were going to do a social Sunday today, but since you were being interviewed by me, you decided to postpone it. So I do want to jump into how long have you been a streamer, and
Mm.
you incorporating your teachings in the stream. Like every streamer has a gimmick of sorts or what they want to bring, what makes them unique. And yours is very much the learning bit of like you just take everything of what you're learning from college, and it's like, look at all this stuff that I'm paying thousands of dollars for, and I'm giving this that practically away to you guys for free. So like, how did you find your way into Twitch, and
Uh-huh.
how did you start to form like the passions that you love and start putting out in the social Sundays?
Yeah. I think the big thing was I was trying to find a gimmick. I really was trying to find my like niche in streaming and what I felt like I wanted to associate myself with. For a while, it was art, and I love art, and I still love making art. But in switching kind of my collegiate to like paths and what my career may end up being, I'm not entirely sure where it's going yet, but where it may end up going is towards the social sciences. And over the course of me learning about anthropology, I have started watching YouTube videos and content online, and I've become um, uh, introduced to a bunch of people who are kind of a part of this renaissance online, where we are, and I say we, but I'm still kind of learning and figuring stuff out myself, but that they are taking on the role of being science communicators on free platforms to share information with everyone. Because at the end of the day, what I believe, which is something I've believed um, throughout many different disciplines, that these things that can benefit us, whether it's yoga or
Hmm.
education, should be something that everyone has accessibility to. I do not feel like it is fair that some people can't afford to do a $15 class every day for yoga and other people can't, but everybody can benefit from it. I feel like that's completely unfair. And the same goes for schooling. If you can't afford education, I feel like this stuff is imperative. Knowledge is what propels our societies to continue growing and evolving. And it's what people oftentimes want to diminish, the first and mostest. So, yeah, I think it was just, I started taking these classes. I wanted to share my information because I love word vomiting on people about the things I find fascinating. And it sort of took off. I was heavily inspired by a streamer called Tiny Toxic Tofu. She was one of the first people that I watched that did more educational focused content. She also plays video games, but she's a physicist and she's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And watching her content, watching how she delivered information, watching how confident she was, and like her wealth of knowledge, and how people flock to her because they want to learn about these things. They want to find ways to kind of expand their knowledge of the universe and whatever else is the topic of interest. So that just kind of really brought me to where I am now, where I don't teach on Sundays because I don't necessarily think I qualify for that. But I think that we learn together, and we it's a knowledge exchange. And I just think that that's really an important thing to kind of, it's something that I want to give back to the world if possible.
And but one of the things that I want to add to that is have you ever kind of like fallen into the I guess it would be crud. Not now the word is the imposter syndrome when you do these of like, hey, like am I giving these people the right information? You know, because like even whenever I do like my film discussions, and it's like I'm getting all my information, you know, from external sources as I'm learning it and also giving my own opinion about it. I'm like over here like, am I telling the same damn thing correctly? Am I doing this right? You know, so like I always like wonder, do you have that imposter syndrome when you do some of these social Sundays, and how do you handle that imposter syndrome?
Gosh, of course. I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot, and I actually even in my own personal life, I do a lot of qualifying. And so I like to qualify all of my information that I share with people by saying, I'm not a professional. I don't know this for sure. This is like, I'd give all these like ways out for me, so that if anybody were to turn around and be like, okay, well, this is actually wrong. It's like, well, I gave you what I thought was right. That's like the
Yeah.
first element is like, yes, I have imposter syndrome. I experience it regularly. Even with the stuff that I know for certain, I still doubt myself because that's just where I'm kind of at with my journey. But the other
Yeah.
element of that is I have imposter syndrome, but knowledge is, and like education and this information that we're getting from the world and what we're learning is sometimes always in a state of flux. And
Hmm.
so what you might learn from based on maybe it's all kind of like, it's almost relative in a sense. There is a
Yeah.
truth, but if you're reading a book that's from 1900s, but there's an
Yeah.
updated book from the 2000s, like they've learned stuff, but you are still reading a book that has old information, and it doesn't make you
Yeah.
necessarily wrong for the time, but with new information, I think the biggest thing is we have imposter syndrome, but are we willing to be flexible enough and have humility to say like,
Yeah.
okay, you're right, and I need to change it. And so that can be hard, but it is a part of that fold.
I definitely feel that because there's a lot of the I've read like a lot of some of the classic stuff, Aristotle's Poetics, um,
Mm.
the monomyth, and James Campbell, and there's like a lot of people that are like, well, you're just regurgitating some old worldviews. I was like, well, those old worldviews still fucking ring today. Like it doesn't go away. It's like we just add to it. So when like you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
like like, oh, I'm not a professional. This is just, and it's like, well, I think there is a way you can still sit there and say I am a professional in this field because I am studying. You know, sooner or
Mm.
later, it's kind of like the same thing of for like the longest time I used to never view myself as a writer or a filmmaker, but it's like you have worked on films before and you have
Yeah.
written scripts before. You're a writer, you may not be published or whatever, but in a sense you are that. And but like to me, I would like always find like these like little minute kind of like I guess like nets for like if people do catch me as like the like actually. And of
Mm-hmm.
course there's a part of me, like I like to call it the Bill Burr of me, that's like, actually shut the fuck up, like, it's like it's like, you fucking nerd, as I'm over here spouting shit and like being smart and everything. Like that's my attitude sometimes towards him. But the other end to me
Mm.
is I also feel like I have a fear of humility of, well, what if I don't
Yeah.
know it all? Which again, we don't. No
Yeah,
matter what you do, you
absolutely.
can't know it all. But
Yeah.
when you're trying to teach it, and then some asshole comes in, and it's like, actually, I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Myth, I'm trying to do your best, actually, interpretation, actually.
Actually.
But and someone comes in here and does this, it's like,
Mm.
uh I don't know, it's like it's almost like a flex that they give. and you kind of you're
Mm-hmm.
trying not to be reactive. That's one of my big things for
Mm-hmm.
this year, not to be reactive, because the moment that people start doing
Mm.
that, it's like, you know what? I didn't fucking ask for your goddamn opinion, so shut the fuck up. Uh, but at the same time, too,
I
it's
I
like
can relate.
you got to be open. It's like, all right, what did you say, and everything. And
Yeah.
of course, if it's something that's enlightening, it's like, oh, I did not know. If it's something dumb, then just say it in your head. God, what a fucking moron, and just continue on. Like,
Move
you
on.
know,
Yeah.
that's my way, I guess, of interpreting it and everything. But Nikki, I do look at you as a professional. You are very much a
Oh.
professional in your field. And when I do learn, and I do get that it's like we're learning with, that's still just as helpful.
Mhm.
Because I feel like no
Yeah.
matter what, we're still
Yeah.
learning. Like I've been studying
Agreed.
screenwriting for, God, it's been what, 2016? It's been a long time since I've been studying screenwriting, and I still am
Math.
learning. I Well, no, I'm like looking at that, and it's like one more digit away, and that's almost 10 years. Jesus freaking Christ.
That's
But it's the fact that it's
amazing.
been that, and it's the same thing with writing. Like I'm learning more stuff
Yeah.
about turning gothic genre into um the whatchamacallit, into like a mystery, and I'm learning
Oh, that's
like,
so cool.
can I write a modern day gothic drama as like a mystery? And every time I keep reading a book, I'm like, it's like one step ahead of me of, yes, you can. This is how they
Mm-hmm.
did it. Learn,
Yeah.
take what you think works, and apply it to what you do, regardless if it doesn't look, bad or not. But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you just do it.
The more I feel like the more that you and anyone shows up for learning, the more confident we're going to feel in whatever field we're in. So
Yeah,
like, we have I don't know how to shake imposter syndrome. I think it's kind of one of those it could be a healthy way to keep you kind of humble or to keep you whatever, but at the end of the day, if our interests continue to persist and we continue pursuing these ideas that we find fascinating and learning about them, we are going to just keep getting closer to maybe being confident enough to say we are professionals, and feel it, because you could
yeah.
say it to me, I'd be like, thank you. And I could say it to you and you could be like, thank you. But still, we're going to walk away and be like, I'm not a professional. I suck.
You're just over there having a conversation in the bathroom in front of the mirror, you know,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
your significant
Crying.
others or your siblings or be like, what's going on in
Yeah.
there? It's like, nothing's going on. Okay, can I just freaking have a freaking moment? Like, can I break down here for a moment, just tear myself apart, just
Yeah.
for your loved ones to just put yourself back together again, but because that's what I
Absolutely.
do. It's like I've had people that they tell me, it's like, oh my God, dude, I look forward to your podcast like every damn time. I watch the YouTube videos, I do this, and I'm all like, oh my God, thank you, that means so much. Inside my head is like, they're just being fucking nice, man. It's like,
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
Gothic.
the inner
I get
critic, that
you.
inner fucking
Yeah.
critic. And
Yeah.
it's all like, man, in your mind you're like, God, can you shut the fuck up and take the compliment? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like people care. And I've learned to be a lot easier with myself on this podcast, because
Good.
I do see who lurks, I do see who sticks around. So to me, I know who are those people that are the big supporters, which, shout
Yeah,
out to
yeah,
you
yeah.
guys for being the big supporters. But still, it's like, to battle that imposter syndrome, sometimes all I have to do is just look at those reoccurring names that are always there constantly when I do the
Yeah.
podcast. Is like, that's where they come here for. They don't come there to watch me paint or to watch me shit on some kid on fucking Fortnite because he played better than me. It's like, they're here to watch me have a full-blown meltdown, and
We don't
and to talk cinema, and to lose your fucking train of thought every 15. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
shorter, it's every 2 to 3
Mm-hmm.
minutes I lose my train of thought.
Same. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. There is an element of at some point we have to just walk away from the compliment thinking, you know what? They took a second to tell me they liked it. So I'm gonna live off of that. I'm just gonna let that sit with me because like they didn't have to. They could have just been like,
Yeah.
not gonna say a goddamn thing. So
Or
yeah.
they could have sat there and said, oh, it was good.
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
like, what was good about it?
Yeah.
That's one thing I have to,
Elaborate.
that's one thing I have to stop myself with, because not everyone is going to give you that feedback that you so rightly feel like you deserve.
Right.
And
I agree.
you're just all like, like, what did you like about it? It was like, oh, that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but what did you
Yeah.
like? Did you like the introduction? Did you like it that the episode ended? Did you like that this train wreck was over? What do you like? And then, you know what, to quote the Notebook, I don't watch it, but I know the line is, what do you want? You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
you just want
Mm-hmm.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to quote all that,
Yeah.
and then you're just self-destructing right then and there, which
Oh yeah.
is another thing I'm working on this year, trying not to self-destruct. So when people are all
Hell
like, I
yeah.
love the podcast, it's really great, I was like, what's great about it? Because then you're just setting yourself up to, you're gonna hurt your own feelings, and then this person's gonna be like,
Yes.
you're fucking psycho. And it's all like, I don't need
Yeah.
a therapist to fucking tell me I'm a psycho. I fucking have conversations with myself. It's like, I know
I
that.
have the T-shirt, okay?
Exactly. You know, I have the mental health. I wear it as a bandana. I don't hide that, you know.
Yeah, I
But
definitely can understand it. I get it.
we're gonna fall into this because there's no other way we
Mm,
could transition after,
yeah.
like, let's talk about self-deprecating time with Gothic and Nikki and how we
Mhm.
struggle with
Mhm.
that. We're gonna talk about our
Yeah.
first film and these wonderful imaginative films that Nikki has brought us today. With the first one being, and it's the first time I've actually seen it today, The Fall, 2006, directed by Tarsem Singh. It's like an adventure fantasy. The best way I can put for most people who have never heard of this film, it's the Princess Bride and the Wizard of Oz if they had a child. That's probably the best way
Ooh.
possible that you could sit there and put. It mixes some of the story elements and the way how the story is told through that through those two films. Um, but it there's something far more deeper on the level of, we're not in Kansas anymore. Um, and I can't throw a freaking reference for Princess Bride. I apologize, Bird, if you're listening. But the thing about the film, it is a silent stunt actor, like a silent era stunt actor, who, while recovering from an accident, is telling a story to a child and kind of manipulating her in a way to kind of help him deal with the pain that he's going through. Uh, but somewhere deeper into that story that he's telling this child, who is infatuated with it, um, there's a lot of self-discovery in himself and how he handles his relationships with people, both personal and professional. Nikki,
Mhm.
why did you pick this film?
Oh, God. Well, I think initially, ultimately, I picked the film because I am enamored with it. I am enamored with almost every single element of this film. I think that it is written well. I think that it is filmed well. I think that it is cast well. Um, I think as far as like the message that I received from it, I believe that it is such a wonderful message for people who are interested in film, entertainment, humanity, pain, healing, growth, storytelling, like a plethora of stuff. I feel like it's just very pertinent. I actually have a blurb here of like what I think about when I think about The Fall. Do you mind if
Okay.
I read it off?
Yes.
Okay. So I kind of mentioned this to you already, but this I feel is a love story to stunt people. It's a love story to stunt people, to storytelling, and how lived experiences can shift perspectives for people. But it nevertheless can make an incredibly good story. It's how storytelling is a collaborative effort. Not one person can tell a story, especially if you are trying, like, life is a collaborative effort, right? And we are all
Mm-hmm.
telling this like incredible, intricate story of life with one another. And you can do it by yourself. You could be solo and live as a hermit in the woods, but how much richer can your life be if you tell it with someone else, right? And if you start sharing your story with other people, you are then kind of responsible for your place within that story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and different lived experiences can like equate to shared values and ideas. So, like for this film, Lee Pace, who is the main actor, he is undergoing, like you mentioned, pain. He's undergoing these like multiple levels of pain, physical pain, heartbreak over a romantic relationship, but also heartbreak over the fact that he may never perform again. Like he is just beaten down. And there's this young girl who is also in this hospital, which the whole film for the characters telling the story happens in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And for the young girl, she's injured herself as well. And like the way she is basically my understanding is that she is like an immigrant who has moved over to the
Yeah.
States and is working on, a fruit farm, and she hurt herself on the fruit farm. And her lived experience is totally different than this stunt performer, but yet somehow they can come together, and through language barrier, through age barrier, through um, all these layers of differences, they are creating and weaving the story together,
Hmm.
and it's beautiful. So that's why I picked it. It's amazing.
It's very parallel to just filmmaking in general, as you mentioned earlier, that
Mm,
being a collaborative effort. Like there
mm,
are other arts that yeah, you can kind of do, like a book writing, you can kind of do that by yourself, but
mm.
film, it's a whole collaborative effort. These two characters,
Yeah.
collaborative effort, because even then he's trying to tell the story all by himself, and then
Mm.
later in the film she starts interjecting because of the stories she tells him of like her father and everything, and he starts pulling that
Yeah.
in to the point that really it almost feels like he's not even telling the story anymore now.
Oh yeah.
That's all in her court. And then when he starts
Yeah.
being destructive with it, and she's
Mm,
like, "No, stop all this," and he was able to
mm,
salvage what it is, and it's very heartbreaking. But to me, I felt like
mm,
that's the creative experience.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
this film is so fucking deep. Like, really, we could probably
Yeah,
do an entire episode on just how deep the fall is. From it's
absolutely.
camera, because one of the best visuals I love is the
Mm.
beginning when he's telling the story and he talks
Oh,
about Butterfly Reef and how
yeah.
you get the story of I think it was right when he was introducing Charles Darwin's character, and
Mhm.
how the main villain of that story gets him by sending him what was like a dead butterfly that he had pinned. And you have this image, and the camera is just turning, and as you see it fade away, you see what is Butterfly Reef. And I was like, oh, that is not CGI whatsoever. That is fucking beautiful in camera effects. Like, it was wonderful. And I know I'll always sit there and say this, they just don't make them like this anymore. But in all honesty,
Mm,
they do in a sense, because off stream, me and Nikki were talking about the parallels between this and Poor Things, and how
mhm,
Poor Things, they use like there is CGI in it, because obviously there's like this one moment where like the sky looks like a whole painting just being like animated
mhm.
and everything, but everything else you can tell is practically it's practical. It's all
Yeah.
practical effects, the costumes and everything. It's a living,
Mhm.
breathing world, very much like this, and you
Mhm.
can tell the
Yeah.
difference, because when he tells the child that this is an epic, you can go back and look at those films of you know the 40s, 50s, 60s, where the epics were really, really huge. And really, you can go back to the
Mhm.
20s when you looked at something like Faust and Metropolis, because those were epic all on their own. And you could see in the color and the grand scale of things. You don't have that much anymore. Maybe Dune.
Yeah.
Dune was somewhat, but you could tell what was CGI'd and then what wasn't.
Yeah.
So Dune kind of takes us out of it. But when you look at the different timelines um what Lee Pace's character and the little girl is on the outskirts of LA in the 20s, him telling the story where it's kind of a bit like muted colors, like for a place of healing, there's a lot of miserable people, but then you switch over to this world of epic fantasy and everything is beautiful, even to when Lee Pace's character of the bandit, where like his hand
Mhm.
is like red and behind the backdrop of the red flag and everything. You
Oh.
posted the GIF, and it's very striking
Oh.
visuals. Um,
Oh, it's so good. Yes.
but for Robin, this is like a 2 hour long movie. Really, when you add the credits, I think the credits are probably like an extra, like I think the credits are like 10 to 15 minutes. So it's probably like right around there. It's 2 hours of your life that it's not gonna be one that after you're done watching it, it's like, well, I'm not gonna get those 2 hours back. It's like, no, this is a very breathtaking film. And
I I would almost, and it's not nearly as kind of like ethereal and uh I don't know of a different word, but it's not nearly as ethereal, I would say, as like, have you ever seen The Fountain?
no, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Okay, well, if
That's
anybody
more
in
homework.
chat, Yeah. I would 100% look into The Fountain. The Fountain is a romance kind of fantasy, sciency fantasy kind of film. And it's also a time traveling film, and I love me a good time traveler. But I would kind of equate like the storytelling and stuff to that film to some degree. It's beautiful, and the visuals are kind of beautiful. The Fountain is wonderful, yes. So like that's kind of what I would also equate it to, but yeah, it's magical. It's a magical experience. The locations are incredible. I remember looking it up, and I can't remember the details or like the fun facts now, but apparently they like spent like a week or more just filming some of the traveling to
Hmm.
the actual like destination that they were going to fight the enemy at, traveling over a variety of landscapes. It was deserts, it was rocky arid landscapes, it was like mountain. They just spent like so much money and time on just filming these wide shots of them traveling across the landscape, and it's just stunning.
Wow. So The Fountain is
Yeah.
a 2006 American epic science fiction romance drama. That's a fucking mouthful. That's what she said.
Yeah.
I apologize. A man, Hugh Jackman, travels through time on a quest for immortality and to save the woman, Raquel Weisz, he loves. As a 16th century conquistador, Thomas searches for the legendary Fountain of Youth. As a present day scientist, he desperately struggles to cure cancer that is killing his wife. Finally, as a 26th century astronaut in deep space, Tom begins to grasp mysteries of life, love, and death. This also reminds me, have you heard? Oh my god, it was like Halle Berry and I think Tom Hanks, Cloud Atlas.
Yes, I
This
have.
kind
I
of this
have.
kind of gives me a Cloud Atlas feel and
That
everything. But
those two are far more related. Yeah, I would say. I would agree.
yeah, okay. For one, I love Hugh Jackman, not just because he's Wolverine,
Woo!
because I mean he plays a very good Wolverine. But I
Yes,
love
agreed.
Raquel Weisz. If I remember correctly, she was the main, yeah, she was the main female hero in The Mummy.
The
So
mummy. She was our
I
librarian.
yes,
Anthropology chick.
there you go. Yeah, there's an, you know what, I'm surprised you just never picked that one for one of your favorite ones, because
It
Evie
is
was one of
living.
the best characters ever written in that, in that swashbuckling horror movie,
I love her. I just want to cosplay her in my day to day life because I just that she's everything I want to be.
Well,
But
maybe you could do that
yeah,
for a future stream, and you can set up like a roll of mini bookcases and just like knock them all over and be like, "Look, I'm Evie
amazing.
from The Mummy." You know, um,
Perfect.
there you go. But yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
for one, so like I can't remember when was the first time I probably have seen Lee Pace, but I
Mm.
definitely remember his name in Guardians of the Galaxy and how like such a lackluster villain. And a lot of
Um,
people told me, wow, they really wasted such a great actor on such a kind of
Oh,
crappy Marvel villain, which Marvel is known
yeah,
to not have the best villains. And
yeah.
so when I saw him in the fall, I was like, where the fuck is this at? Like, you
Oh,
know,
man.
it there's so much of like this film that it's like now I really have to go look at Lee's other works and everything, because this
Go ahead.
continue. Oh, it's like we're holding on breath, like which one's going first. Um, for one, also too, I think one of the main reasons too I love this film so much is I love the silent era of filmmaking. It's cinema at its
Mm,
purest form without the need of audio or dialogue. There were title cards, but they used them as very few as possible and everything. So
mm,
I loved it, especially towards the end of this movie when the little girl is given this whole speech about like adventure and all this, and storytelling, and like we're getting Buster Keaton, from the general. We're getting uh uh Charlie Chaplin. God dang, I can't believe I forgot that. I got the book in the back. Charlie Chaplin's popping up in there. I told you off stream
mm,
Harold Lloyd and everything, and you get the iconic
mm,
scene where he leaps off onto the clock tower and he's dangling off of the little small
mhm.
minute hand, or no, it's the hour hand, and it's all of the seriousness of like they didn't really have stunt actors. Kind of stunt actors were starting to come in at this time, but at the
Mhm.
time, the lead actors did all their stuff for, especially in comedies. Comedies always sit there, seem like you think, oh, that's going to be easy. I was like, no, comedy was vaudeville on screen, and it was very, very physical. And so I love any film that shines an extra light of an era in which we do not pay attention to because the modern day views that quite simply as it's black and white, it's fucking old, and it's fucking boring. And
Yeah.
there's so much of me that gets angry. I was like, get the fuck off your damn TikTok. Watch something that's longer than 30 fucking seconds while I'm over here making content that's somewhere between ranging 15 seconds to a minute. I know. I ain't helping the beast neither. I'm fucking feeding it. But still, like, to me, when I look at it, go back. When a lot of people sit there and say, oh, that's not original, go back and watch a lot of these classics. You'll find even those films that you love that
Yeah.
are your favorites. Now you'll find the origin and the pulse of where that story is. And if you love it even more, then you get into reading and you'll find the pulse of where those films got it. And
Yeah.
that's my way of archaeology, especially in screenwriting.
Yeah.
I love reading a script and sitting there and finding these moments in a story that are these some would say plot points. People would sit there and say story beats. I'm not going to get into that argument right now. I call them story beats, plain and simple. But you feel like an archaeologist and you're all like, oh, this is what they did. Oh, that's how they did that. That's how I fell in love with that moment, because they had to plant the seed of this early on. And it's like, remember that little thing, here it comes, and it makes it far more bigger. And so
Yeah.
films that do this, I don't know if you've seen Hugo.
Actually, I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have.
So Hugo does the same thing too, where in this fantasy story, it's about a boy that lost his dad, so he becomes an orphan inside the subway system, and he is trying to repair his automaton. And
Oh,
his father,
yeah.
who
I haven't
passed
seen it in
away
a
in an
long time.
accident, his father who passes
Yes.
away in an accident, this little boy practically ends up finding out that the man that sells candies and trinkets in the subway thing in France
Mm.
practically was the guy that hired his dad to make the automaton. And he is Georges Méliès, the famous
Ah.
French illusionist and early filmmaker that brought horror, science fiction, fantasy all to the screen with his
Ah!
illusions. And I fell in love with that, that film. And
Yeah.
even at that film, like, there is like this whole nod thing where you see everything that Méliès has done, and that Scorsese has
Mm.
practically made this film in the name of Méliès, because he feels like that's
Yeah.
a filmmaker people need to sit there and know. They need to sit there and
Yeah.
go back and watch this man's work and find out, well, this is where the roots of horror kind of went. They were very cheeky and funny, but still, it was the first time you ever saw the devil on screen, witches, bats,
Mm.
vampires, some of these tropes that what we know today. Méliès helped
Yeah.
establish that. And I love films that do this. Like any film
Yeah.
that can do a good callback and tell us, more or less, just reach back and look there. Just because it's silent and just because it's black and white does not mean that it's old and it's crappy. Because
Agreed.
I still live by, and I know I've said this quite a few times. There is, my God, hold on, Night of the
Mm-hmm.
Living Dead. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but the director of Night of the Living Dead, Tom Savini, the 1999 remake, he has a quote that he says when it comes to just films all in general, is a film is never old if you've never seen it before.
I like that. I
So
like that a lot.
that could branch to anywhere from the silence to today. A film
Mm-hmm.
is never really old until you discovered it. And there's no, I guess you can say time is a man-made construct, all that other stuff. But I love what Tom Savini sit there and says, and I always dig sometimes throughout the silent era, and it's like, I found that little wonderful, wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to put that in a movie or in a book. You know,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
it's an era that is sadly being forgotten, labeled as
Yeah.
timeless. Um, and folks, go watch a fucking silence film.
Well, and
Just go do it.
the beauty about films like The Fall and Hugo, and then any other film that might like fall into the very similar category, is that it is bringing those, it is kind of highlighting and like elevating those stories, so that
Mm-hmm.
but catering it to the entertainment that the audience
Mm-hmm.
is going to understand. And so theoretically, the beauty, at least I think, about film is that there is, because it's a creative endeavor. There's probably going to be films for everyone, and there's probably going to be films that aren't going to meet somebody's expectations or wants or needs, and that keeps the film industry going. So
Mm-hmm.
like people aren't going to fall in love with silent stunt films, right? But there will be those kids who watch this movie, or there will be that one, intern or employee somewhere who sees this movie and hears about it and watches it and then is like enraptured by it and then
Mm-hmm.
pursues the field. And it's I just think that films like this can bring those older stories to light. But I do agree with you. I think that I only recently started watching Charlie Chapman.
Chaplin.
Is that right?
Chaplin.
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 Sorry. Started watching his films because Dan really loves them. And I had never seen any of them before, but I really enjoy them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of person who needs to have a specific type of film to watch it. I just like artsy films, but it was really enjoyable. And so I think, yeah, I agree with you on that front, but go
Which
ahead.
one of Chaplin's works have you seen so far?
Actually, I've only seen one, and it is I think it was The Kid. I think we
Oh
watched The
my
Kid.
God. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
when
yeah,
he's
yeah. And it was
crying and the boy's going away and he's like, "No, I'm not going to leave you." And he's hugging
yes.
him, Yeah.
Admittedly, there were scenes, people were flying around, stuff was happening, and I just was like, what the heck? When was this made? This is, and I thought it was, and it's something that's showcased in the fall as well, but like kind of here and there, where that silent movement, that silent like communication that comes across from film, where you don't have to say anything in order for something to be evoked. It
Yeah.
was brilliant. It was brilliant. The fight in the apartment where they're trying to catch, I think they were trying to catch the boy, or they were trying to catch someone. The
Yeah.
what's it called, the not the boy, but the
The Tramp?
not hermit, the tramp. Thank you. When they're trying to catch the tramp and they're running around the apartment, it just was like, I don't know. I was very enamored with the concept. And um
Chaplin knows how to keep it entertaining but also make you walk away with some type of lesson learned. Um
yeah.
and most of his things. And like his stuff is never it's never really complicated or complex. Though there are some people it's
Hmm.
all like most of the stuff is like be kind to those that are suffering because you could easily just be one of those. And
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
there's a lot of Chaplin stuff. I love the kid. Gold Rush I feel is like the easiest one for most people that are
Oh.
kind of stepping in. And that one
Hmm.
has like kind of almost like a murder mystery subplot into it because there's like
Woo!
there's like one person that kind of I think quote unquote gets killed and they're trying to look for him and they're trying to look for the gold that he stashed. And so it's
Ah.
like, well, this guy died, but he didn't say exactly where did the gold go. But the tramp overheard it and he's like, I know where
Mm.
it's at and everything. And so now they got to use him. But also too, he falls in love with a woman
Ah.
like he does in every story. He falls in love with a woman
Yes.
and everything. And then just because he is in rags, he kind of gets laughed away and he's like heartbroken and everything. And it's always like the very handsome pretty dude's like, yes, I get the lady because I have the money, I got the muscles. But at
Yeah.
the end of the film the tramp still gets the woman sometimes. And
Yeah.
there's one, I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's practically the tramp is being hired to kind of drive around this fancy man's car, and he falls in love with a blind woman who thinks he's rich. And
Mm.
he ends up like saving practically all the money that he's ever earned, and it breaks him, but he pays for her eye surgery so she can see. And
Ah.
when she was finally able to
Wow.
see, he finally comes and visits her, even though he's kind of distanced himself. He's like, well, now she can see, she's not going to love me. But she notices the mannerisms and like how he would hold her hand and all that and everything. And she starts realizing this is the man I fell in love with. And he kind
Yeah.
of still thinks like, well, just because I look poor, it's like, you're not going to love me. She still loves him and everything.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I love it.
you get that. And I know probably to someday, to some people today, it's like, well, that's cheesy. That's not real. It's like, believe it or not,
Sure.
that is more real than anything. It's like just somewhere in your life, you have faced so much cynicism and so much heartbreak that you've kind
Mm.
of cut yourself off from ever
Hmm.
believing that you could have that much a happy ending.
Right.
Like, the magic's out there, folks. You just got to be patient with it.
And I think that that is kind of at the heart of The Fall as well, where you have this story of this man who, as I mentioned, Lee Pace, he's downtrodden. He has been shat on in all ways, shape, and form that a man can be shat on at that time period as a stunt performer. And then comes in this young girl who is not the woman who, you know, left him for the stronger man, is not the nurse who may or may not have a thing for him. We don't know until we know.
Yeah.
It's this little girl who comes in and like his ending is that he like is on the mend. His ending is that the young girl gets to see the film and like he lives on because trigger warning, the film does have darker connotations as it relates to like mental health, depression, and suicide, and so those are just things to like keep in mind because he is sort of almost the equivalent of like the tramp who's like struggling to make his life mean anything, and then all of a sudden he ends and he's like kind of the hero a bit.
The Great Dictator is a great film. Henry Higgins.
Oh yeah,
that one. I mean, that I feel like the speech given towards the end of The Great Dictator speaks so much more volumes currently where we're at in the political climate. So I know a lot of people have been all like, they've been sharing that and everything. I was like, I've been sharing this for years. It's all like, it's a great speech. It is a great speech that, you know, we should not be dividing ourselves, but we should be united, you know, united against hatred and prejudice and bigotry and privilege and all that. But we're gonna move on because holy hell, we nerded the fuck out with The Fall.
I love it.
I mean, that's the best way we got to talk about these movie thing is having a full nerdgasm.
If I can say one more thing about it before I end, just to kind of really coerce people to go and watch this movie can be a little difficult to find, but I highly recommend you go and check it out because one of the really incredible elements about this film, and on top of everything else that I mentioned, is that it is, when I said it's about perspective, you are getting the story from Lee Pace, but you are seeing it how the young girl would see it. So the characters will change and evolve, and the story is going to change depending on how the young girl visualizes things. And you will notice, and I don't know if you notice this, Gothic, but some of the characters in the actual story are representative of the people the young girl knows in life. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting is that for our main character, he does a lot of Western films. So at that time, they called indigenous people to the Native Americas and Native American people Indians. And she heard Indian, and she is not from America. So her version of Indian was a Middle Eastern person, was the gentleman who she had seen that was a Middle Eastern man. And I thought that that is such a subtle but like incredible way of depicting not only just the innocence of this young child, but also how our realities are dependent entirely on how we are in our experiences. So that's the last thing I wanted to say. I just love it. I love The Fall.
You can watch it currently right now on Mubi. I got the 7-day free trial. I was able to watch it, and it's an amazing watch, folks. Watch it. It's on Mubi. You can't beat a free trial. Just get the free trial, and then you can cancel it same day, you know, if you just want to watch Fall. But Mubi also, and this is not a sponsorship, Mubi is the best streaming service for when you want to sit there and watch a bunch of international pictures from across the globe, especially by some filmmakers that may not be like super famous, may not be a Michael Bay or Steven Spielberg, but Mubi does have great films that are beautiful visuals, wonderful stories. Just go check it out. That's not even really a plug, but I'm gonna plug it in there. You know, Mubi sponsor me.
Movie sponsorship when? Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like, you know, I'll just start getting all the streaming services stuff like Shudder and Mubi and Criterion Channel.
Gothic, side note for realsies, if you have not already, make your freaking media kit and send it to them. Send it to them. Just send it, because your content is so worth it, and they would love you. Anyway.
This is probably what's going to be on the clip too. Whenever I make the clips, it's all like just manifesting it and just let Nikki just shout out there for my sponsorship. I also got to sit there and say this too. For folks who no, they're 2000s media. The director of The Fall, Tarsum Singh, did not know this until I looked him up. This is the same guy that did The Cell with Jennifer Lopez and Vincent D'Onofrio. Yeah.
So if you like those visuals,
those were beautiful, very morbid visuals, but to see him go from that, and it's, I think 6 years later, there's The Fall, which to me, it's all like, I hope his next film isn't another because you got The Cell, The Fall, where you got The Woods or something like that,
I don't know, that rule of threes.
Yeah, but we're going to move on to film number 2, which I sadly have not been able to see, but I do know of its story. It is director David Lowery's The Green Knight. I think, was it an A24 picture?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was.
I knew it. I could tell by how it's filmed too.
Yeah, yes.
You can tell what's an A24 picture,
Absolutely.
So why did you pick The Green Knight?
Okay, I'm about to read this next blurb. Now, The Green Knight, when it first came out, I will be honest, I was enamored with Dev Patel. So like in and of itself, I was going to watch the film regardless because he was in it. But then I went and I watched the visuals, and I believe it was the trailer that I watched that had very, very, very little like it didn't define what the story was. It just kind of gave you these glimpses, and it was very
it didn't spoil like most Hollywood trailers where within 3 minutes it's like, I don't need to see the fucking movie. Like you just
Exactly. And so it hooked me immediately. I then went and I read the book, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I have completely forgotten it. It's not a very long read, but I just forgot it all. And then when I actually watched it, God, it was beautiful. It was riveting. It was adventurous. It was, let me read this little blurb. I think that it is rich storytelling again, and you'll see with all 3 of these films that I picked, I didn't realize this, but in addition to imagination being a huge factor for them, there's also perception equaling reality. And so it's about the hero's journey, and what one values as success and heroism, the inevitability of death, and the control one has on how their own story will end. It's about courage and like truly how someone wants to be defined, because we have so much control in that regard, right? And I think ultimately I picked this one because I think about this movie at least 5 times a year, and I only watch it every so often because it is a very long film. But I actually, when we get to it, if we get to it, I actually looked up my favorite monologue from it. That I'd love to read to you when we get to it, if we get to it, because it's just beautiful. But yeah, that's why I picked it.
I sadly was not able to watch this film, but I had been super interested in seeing this. Yeah, I see the A24. It grossed over $20 million against a budget of $15 million. Not bad. It didn't break even, but still, it did. It at least made back its budget. But the cast is just fucking stacked. You got Dev Patel, Joe Egerton, Surya. I think it's pronounced Chowdhury or Chaduri. I fucking apologize, but Ralph Ineson as the titular Green Knight. There's so much, and just like the art of like the poster and the thank you for the follow,
the sound,
just everything to it, from like its look. I could have also swore that I thought this was like another Robert Eggers thing, because there were at one point some muted colors. Chowdhury. Jesus Christ, that's a fucking tongue twister. I apologize. I don't think. Oh, I've seen A Ghost Story, so I have seen that one of his and everything, which is Casey Affleck, Rooney Mara, Will Oldham, which is more or less like a film about like, are you going to be forgotten? Waiting there, hopefully. Practically all the existential crisis shit that A24 loves to put us through. Because I love Robert Eggers, but you really watch The Lighthouse, that's an existential crisis. It's one of my favorite films from Eggers, but
it's amazing.
And of course, if you haven't seen Nosferatu, what the fuck are you doing? It's at, you can get video on demand now with it, and you can watch it.
I haven't watched it yet. I'm dying. I need to watch it, but I haven't yet.
you gotta watch. I would sit there and say that's a film you have to go see in theaters, because
I want to.
Watching it, it's an it is a welcoming, which we'll get later on to the final film here of the welcoming,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm,
there's that whole scene with the carriage ride and
mm.
how it just opens up for Hutter and the camera pushes in. It's like a welcome to this world of
Ah.
magic. It is dark magic, but welcome, and leave something of
Mhm.
yourself behind. And I was entranced as much as how
Oh.
Lily Rose Death was a somnambulance in it. I felt so entranced by that. That's a film again made for me, for people like me. We love those fucking movies and everything. Um, but back to the Green Knight, because we don't want to sit there and detour too much because we only have so much time. What is the
Okay.
monologue that you wish to share?
Absolutely. So the monologue is actually halfway through the film. You speaking of the welcoming is very interesting because towards the beginning, whenever we're all like you're at the round table with Arthur, with all of his knights, Sir Gawain comes in, and Sir Gawain in this film is actually his nephew. By I think marriage,
Mm,
and so he's coming in, and the Sir Gawain's mother is she is the witch. She is the witch in Sir Arthur's story that I can't quite think of. Not Merlin, but the
Morgan Le Fay.
yes, Morgan Le Fay. She is, and so basically, he's entering into the space, and she is kind of trying to make a name for him, right? And so she puts a spell out there to kind
Mm-hmm.
of force Arthur to take Gawain onto like put him on an adventure, right? And this door, while they're sitting there, and Sir Arthur is talking about like his he has this huge monologue that he's kind of going on, and then all of a sudden the doors open, and that in a very similar vein is this welcoming, this opening up to this adventure. And the Green Knight walks in on his horse, challenges a knight to some sort of duel, promising that if whatever you do to me, I will do back to you in a year's time. Sir Gawain wanting to be a hero, wanting to show off and make sure that his name is remembered. He blindly chops off the head of the Green Knight, and then the Green Knight rides off and is like, all right, I'll see you in a year. I'm going to be doing the same shit to you. And this is the story of Sir Gawain going on this adventure. And like, he travels all across the land. He has these very random vignettes of moments that are stories and kind of like keep moving him forward to figuring out who he is.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one really incredible scene that when you see the movie, it's just beautifully done. It's a time lapse. It's wonderful. But the quote is from him arriving at, I believe it's like the Duke and Duchess's house. And the woman in this scene is played by the same actress. Her name is Alicia Vikander. She's the same actress that plays his kind of like, I want to say she is a, maybe like a harlot, or just basically a part of that like scene. She is not royalty, but it's the same woman. He is in love with that woman back in his village. He sees the same looking woman. I don't know if he registers it, but we do. And she
Mm-hmm.
says this line because he asks her, or she asks him, like why green? And Sir Gawain is kind of like, well, green is he was born that way. Why is the knight green? He's born that way. And she said, um, but like, why not blue or red? And he says, because he is not of this earth. So then the lady says, but green is the color of earth, of living things, of life, and of rot. Then she says, we deck our halls with it and dye our linens, but should it come creeping up the cobbles, we scrub it out fast as we can. When it blooms beneath our skin, we bleed it out. And when we together all find that our reach has exceeded our grasp, we cut it down, we stamp it out, we spread ourselves atop it and smother it beneath our bellies, but it comes back. It does not dally, nor does it wait to plot or conspire. Pull it out by the roots one day, then next, there it is, creeping in around the edges. Whilst we're off looking for red, in comes green. Red is the color of lust, but green is what lust leaves behind in heart, in womb. Green is what is left when ardor fades, when passion dies, when we die too. When we go, your footsteps will fill with grass. Moss shall cover your tombstone, and as the sun rises, green shall spread all over in all its shade and hues. The Digris will overtake your swords and your coins and your battlements, and try as you might, all you hold dear will succumb to it. Your skin, your bones, your virtue. Um,
That's very beautiful.
it's stunning, and in this moment of her kind of presenting this, it's almost like she's honest. he is constantly on this road of being tested. His courage is being tested. His virtue is being tested. And she is almost testing him as well in this. She's testing to see if he is willing to know the right answers. And this is one of those moments where it's just focused on her and it's really intense and it's just so beautifully done. And it leaves this character kind of being like, I don't know, green. I don't know.
He's
But
like,
it's
I
amazing.
just
It's
like the
amazing.
color, and
Yeah.
she just gives him this whole like, there's more to this than what you
Yeah.
did not just pick this color. It's almost like maybe
Yeah.
she could have plucked something from what his soul probably definitely needed to hear. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something to
Mm-hmm.
give him then maybe on his journey as he continues, that
Yes.
that's something which that's even wonderful. That's very Arthurian. I yeah, is it
Yes.
Arthurian?
Yes.
Is that the proper?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
I believe
It's
so. Yes.
it's very Arthurian because this feels like this is also something that Merlin would probably say to Arthur, and then Arthur's like, "Can you just fucking say anything that isn't in a fucking riddle?" Like, you
Yeah.
know.
Arthur is actually in the movie as well. It's just, oh, it's so good. Or not Arthur, Merlin. Merlin's in the
Oh, okay.
story. But yeah, it's incredible. And I note this in the Willy Wonka comment that I'm going to make. But one of the things that I'm learning in anthropology at the moment is about rites of passage. And there is by Van Gennep. He is kind of like he has one perspective on the rites of passage, which is broken down into three different stages. You
Mhm.
have the I have it somewhere. You have the separation, which is essentially the person is going on an adventure. They know that they need to kind of get outside of what they are, and they're moving towards something new, something different. Then you have the liminality phase, which is that in between where they're not really here, not really there, kind of floating in this ether, but there is this transformation happening. And then the integration phase towards the end, or the incorporation, where they integrate back into society. They are their new form. They have shed the old form and it is now completely in their new state. And I feel like, especially with the Green Knight and Willy Wonka, it holds very true. So I
Yeah.
just find that very interesting as well.
No, I'm not the nerd here on the monomyths, but everything, yeah, what you described, it's very much what I can remember in aspects of what Campbell would sit there and say, that essentially when you do go off on your journey and then you get the belly of the well segment, that it is you being swallowed up by the adventure, and while you're going through, before you get spit out, you're going to be molded to uh survive this adventure, because you have to go and change. You can't be the person you were, that was wanting to go on the adventure. This is the moment in time where you do go through a change, so once you were spit out, you will be ready to be set off on the adventure. And then kind of skipping ahead to kind of like the Dark Night of the Soul, there is that weird limbo
Mm.
of, you feel like you're kind of lost, maybe you should get up and everything, but this is where the moment that you go through, well, you know what, I survived everything else leading up to here, I think I can fucking
Mm-hmm.
push on this. And then it goes on into your final act where your character has
Yeah.
returned to the ordinary world, changed, and sometimes they stick into that ordinary world or they leave,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
there are some stuff like The Hobbit where both Bilbo and Frodo, they go on this adventure and they come back a
Yeah.
changed person, but they kind of, where Bilbo lingered in the Shire, sooner or later
Mm.
in Lord of the Rings, both him and Frodo will travel. Now, this is where I kind of get lost in some of the Tolkien references, but they go with the elves, and it's almost like an afterlife, almost like in a
Yeah.
sense of what they're
Yeah.
going through. And then you look at many people probably have never heard this film, but The Searchers by John Wayne, where
Oh no, I don't think I've
where
seen it.
John Wayne is practically hired to go get his niece, who has been kidnapped by
Mm-hmm.
the Indians, and her family has been killed. And his job is, because the only reason he's being hired is because he knows that world out there. So he doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
go too much of a change, but there is a sadness in his character, because as he goes out there, he handles the world, he brings back the niece, he does the good thing. But as he looks towards the family that is happy to have her back, what's left of it, he just kind of waits for him outside, and he looks at him as, they're all happy and they're now back together as a family. And he just kind of looks back out there at the frontier, and he's like, that's where I belong. I don't belong
Mm-hmm.
here. I've come back changed enough, but I cannot be with these people because I am not these people, even though they're family. I'm going to go out back into the frontier and I'm going to go on another series of adventures, you know?
Yeah.
So when it comes to storytelling it that way, now I just feel like I need to read Joseph Campbell again. And we just have like, from
Yeah.
what everything you're learning in anthropology and everything. And I'm all like, oh, Campbell kind of has something like that. And, you know,
I would
it's,
love to hear it.
I,
Yeah.
I love when learning about, you know, because this is the same thing with one of my mods, Scorpy, and everything with her spiritualism. And there are certain things that
Uh-huh.
she points out. I was like, oh, that's kind of like what character growth in this certain segment of their hero's journey is. And we bonded over that. And it what kind of got me into tarot. And now it's this. It's like, I guess I gotta go back to college so I can learn all this and be
Mhm.
like, Andrew Campbell said that, but in a smarter terms, and then probably get kicked out.
Well, and I think that that's the beautiful part about anthropology is that anthropology is the study of people, and people are the ones who create these stories. People are the ones that create everything. Everything about our realities is a generated state of like being. And so, yeah, everything. I am not so much a scientist where I'm like everything has like a black and a white and sometimes there's this gray for theoreticals, but for
Yeah.
me I'm more along the lines of a very social sciencey person where I'm like it's black, it's white, it's gray, it's purple, it's green, it could be everything and nothing. It is sometimes like earlier we extrapolated the definition of archaeology where
Yeah.
archaeology is generally attributed to going into the earth, but really it's in essence this idea of digging deeper to understand the root of something. And for you it's film, for
Mhm.
or entertainment, and for me it's bog bodies, you know. But it's just it's still all kind of like it's applicable, and it's because it's just about people, it makes sense. So yeah, I love whenever like disciplines are cross like can cross contaminate themselves and like make something new and amazing.
And you just get to love the people even more because it's those similar interests and how it all just overlaps. And it's like,
Yes.
yes, it's like, did we just become step siblings? You know, I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
step brothers, but did we just become step siblings? You know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
uh, before we wrap up, is there any last thoughts that you have for the Green Knight before we tackle our final film of the evening?
I would just again, I mean, with all three of these films, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you seeing them. I don't want to spoil anything, especially because you haven't seen The Green Knight, and I think there are
Hmm.
elements to the film that would just be really fun for you to see without spoilers. But I think that the end of the film does a really good way of communicating um, what I think Arthurian sort of literature wanted to evoke, where it's this idea of these knights are courageous, they are chival, they are honorable, they do what they set out to do without any issue, and like despite whatever kind of trickery might try to get in our way, they will not be stopped. And I think it does a really good job of explaining that. It also kind of like begs the question of, well, is that thing tricking you to make you a bad person, or is that thing tricking you to allow you to persist? And it all harkens back to that idea of like green and death and growth and life, and how it has this duality, and it's beautiful. So I highly recommend you watch it.
You heard the lady. Go watch the Green Knight. I definitely I gotta try to sit there see if I can get my sister's Amazon Prime account working again on my Roku so then I can watch it because
Mm.
apparently it's on Prime. So if I can do
Woo!
that, then hopefully I can sit there and I can watch it. Or Warbler, I did sit there and see that sub. Thank you so much again for the sub. 16 months in a row. Thank you
Yay!
so much. And our final one, because Nikki did let it slip. We're covering the
Sorry.
world of Roald Dahl with Willy
Mm.
Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, directed by Mel Stewart. I think this is probably the only thing of Mel Stewart's that I know consciously of. I'm pretty sure maybe I've seen everything. But this is a film, like I'm going to repeat myself with the fault. They just don't make them like this anymore. We've had two other like Willy Wonka movies. We've had Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and we've had Wonka,
Mhm.
and they just do not hit that fucking mark like what Gene
Mm-mm.
Wilder does with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Why did you pick this film?
I love Gene Wilder. He's so amazing, but also, I think it does it. It's one of my comfort films. I watch this movie like at least 10 times or more a year. Um, it is fantastical. It lets me forget about where I am, the struggles of what I am experiencing. But as an adult, like as a child, it was very rich in color, rich in storytelling. It was funny and silly and kind of scary. But then as an adult, it now kind of brings with it this like, it's almost like, for me, it is an escape from my reality, just as for Charlie and Grandpa Joe, it is an escape from their reality. And it's like we are all just escaping this realistic, this world of just turmoil and strife and hardship to enter in for all of 25, 30 minutes, this fantastical world that even within itself kind of has these like really dark undertones, these elements of like, I don't know, like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory showed the kids actually leaving the factory with all their weird kind of like juiced and elongated, but with Charlie or with Willy Wonka, you don't get that shit.
No.
They go away and you have no idea where they've gone or if they're surviving. Like you just don't know. And I love that. I love that like really leaves it up to the imagination, leaves it up to like the viewer to decide, do you want this to be a good ending in the way that it is for Charlie, or do you want this to be a bad ending for them? And I don't know. It's just brilliant.
Henry has put it's two different movies when watching it as a child and then when watching it as an adult. That takes a lot of talent to pull off as well as they did. Because as like a child, you look at this as, oh, it's fun. There's all these kids in a chocolate factory, and candy.
Yeah.
What could go on? Well, they get into some silly little hijinks. One kid falls into a chocolate river, which has been repeatedly told, keep your fucking filthy hands out of the river. You're tainting my chocolate. And then you get one kid that, just wants everything. And, she got the one thing she actually did deserve, and she was a bad nut.
Yeah.
And then
I love it.
The one kid that, technically by the technicality of his Grandpa Joe, almost gets kicked out and loses this opportunity of what he has, which she doesn't even know the opportunity of what he's getting. All he knows, he's on an adventure and he gets to experience something that is not poverty that he faces every day. That I get to see what my favorite candy is, how it's made in this fantastical wonderland that I don't even think he could even conjure up just how pure, fantastic, and imaginative it is. I mean, there's a song, Pure Imagination, that Gene Wilder sings. And even when he sings it, he has like a sense of like, oh, this is wonder, but he's also not quite as excited. It's more of the like, you guys are wonderful to see it, but to me, I see this every day of my life. So it doesn't look quite as fantastic. So there's a bit of like in the tone in which he sings. And then of course at the end, Charlie, he's all like, you get the factory, you're the only one left. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And everything. It's like everything that you've been through, everything that you've gone through in life has brought you here and everything. And it's this whole thing of Charlie's character has always been wanting to just do right by his family, make sure that they're taken care of. And now he is given the fucking keys to the kingdom. He can take care of his family. They don't have to live in those slums anymore. They can either live very lavishly or they can live very modestly and still enjoy their life and everything. But everything that what Charlie goes through, and following the rules and, being a good person, it's like he was rewarded this entire thing.
I have two thoughts.
What are your thoughts?
I have two thoughts. And this is just kind of in relation to like, again, sort of my interest in the film and correlating to that as well. But it's like, this film is also, again, this illusory, creative sort of perception-based story where like you are going and you are viewing this through the lens of what you know. There's also these like dualities of like light and dark. Like you said, how he sort of sings the song in this very almost like almost melancholy, but not really, just kind of low energy vibe. And then it's also like this conversation on vices. And I think that that's also a really interesting element because my favorite part of the film is when they're on the boat going through the Chocolate River. And he has that whole moment where he's like, there's no earthly way of knowing which way the river's flowing. And it gets really intense. But then at the end, he gets manic. And like, I think that moment for me, when I watch it as an adult, it makes me think of like, we are in this ride, we are in this world that is kind of fantastical, but like we all have those moments of like, we don't really know what's happening. The intensity of our not knowing, the unknown is getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and it's almost this like manifestation of like an anxiety attack. And then whenever one of the
I'm
characters
feeling it right now.
right, and one of the characters then says, "I want off this ride," and because we are in this fantastical place, it's like, boom, all right. We're done. We can move on to the next thing. And it's just this like jarring sort of sense of like reality is constantly there. It's always there. It's ever present. But like every now and then we can just kind of say like, I want off the ride. I just want to like not have to deal with it anymore. So let's go into the freaking secret zone and look at the freaking Jack looking candy that we're going to give to whatever his name is. I forget that guy, the evil guy's name, the one who's evil, but not evil.
Yeah. And everything, but
oh, it's amazing.
When you go there, there's also like the sense of when Wonka comes out, and this has been regurgitated by so many other people. Everyone sit there and knows that. Yeah, okay. So Henry just mentioned what I said. Slugworth, that's what it was that Sis said.
Slugworth, thank you,
Mr. Slugworth. That's the guy with the scar, if I remember
correct.
right. Yeah. I kind of passed out towards the end of that because I was watching it, in bed for which. Surprised I didn't get no weird dreams, especially after seeing the manic ride. And I'm just like,
oh god,
yeah. When you mentioned the anxiety thing, I was like, that's exactly what I felt. Because as the camera looks like it gets a little bit more closer, the more it cuts to him, and he's just like, it's already building up, and then he's yelling and shouting, and then they're just like, I want off the ride, and like I'm with you too, kid. Like, it's that feeling. And as you're saying it, I'm like, fuck, I'm feeling that shit too. It's like,
and then it's just as easy to be like, boom, it's done. Now let it go and walk away from it.
Now see, that's the tough thing. I can't let that shit go. We've been here before, folks. We can't, because I'm holding. It's like, no. Let's process what the fuck just happened. This dude walks out on the cane, and we're thinking, oh, he's just some broken old man, and then performs a somersault, and pops up, and we all cheer, yay! And then we get into the factory, and Augusta gets swallowed up in the freaking chocolate river. Which again, I do like how Wonka talks about that. It is the only chocolate river that also mixes itself. As they're the Oompa Loompas and everything, and then even learning the origin of that, of like the Cattywampuses, and they're all like, in the most British way, they're like, are you putting us on? Like, what the fuck is the Cattywampus? And you learn that like this doesn't look plausible, but the more you think about it, it works for a chocolate fountain to mix it all up, and they're putting whatever ingredients they have to, so that the waterfall can mix that all up. It all works. It doesn't just seem like something fantastic. It's like, nope, that can work. That can actually work. And then you go onto the manic boat ride, and then you have like all of this, and holy shit, I just lost my fucking thought. God damn it. I am so sorry. But no, it's I'm trying to regather myself. Okay. What was I trying to relate before I talked about the cane? Oh my god, I am losing it.
Oh god, now I'm also hold on, let's take a beat.
See, what it was we revisit the manic boat ride, and it fucking gave us it shook us up.
We got freaked out. I mean, one of the things that I was going to mention, and maybe this could help bring it back, is that the adults absolutely got off that ride, and they were still shaken and jarred. And you could see that, like, even whenever they go into these other areas, there's still this element of like, we're curious about what's going on, but we are a little bit more apprehensive. We're a little bit more like, we are dealing with our trauma now. And the kids are just kind of like, yeah, we're going to the next place. Let's go. I forgot all about that other thing. And you can just see this like dichotomy of like innocence and what Willy Wonka is sort of like maybe able to see, maybe able to like manipulate, I don't know, but like he is both in both worlds of the childhood whatever, and then also the adulthood. I know I have a responsibility to take care of these things, like seeing is believing, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, and
I can't remember what we were talking about now, though.
Exactly. But even when you mentioned like how leery the parents are, like the whole next room after what they go through, like even the mom, I think it's the mom of the kid that practically wants to be like a cowboy.
Yeah.
Even while the kids are like trying to eat anything and everything that isn't glued down. even the mother's like Larry when she comes across the mushroom, and I think like she's like eating like coconut. I'm guessing that's
Yeah.
kind of like what, or like some type of cream. And even
Yeah.
she's like, is this safe
A
to eat?
little.
And like, you know,
Yeah.
some of the adults are all like, can you actually eat that? And Gene's over here still
Mhm.
singing while he's drinking tea from a cup and then proceeds to eat the cup. And,
Oh, I love
and I think the point that I was trying to get is that nothing seems as it seems
it. Mhm.
in this
Mhm.
world. I think that's where I was trying to get to. You know,
Okay.
he pulls that on with the cane. It's like, okay, anything that this guy says, you cannot take it verbatim because it can mean the total opposite. And you know,
Mhm.
you have like,
Mhm.
you know, Augustus going down the river. He's so calm about it after practically almost having a manic episode. No, you were contaminating my chocolate. It's like
Yeah.
and then it kind of felt like after that, like that's when he stopped caring about the kids. It's like one of them
Yeah.
has already broken the rule, that vice, because that kid just had
Yeah.
to fucking put his hand in there. It's like there was more chocolate elsewhere. It's like
Yep.
you could have at least put your hand like where the actual chocolate was dropping, and maybe you would have been able to
Yeah.
capture enough to not contaminate the whole thing. But
Yep.
still, it's like being in that
Yep.
wild ride, not knowing really what the fuck you're looking at. I'm pretty sure I saw like a monkey. I think I saw a banana. Through all this, there was a bunch of weird images, and in his whole manicness, it goes to show you
Yeah.
this seems like a wonderful, beautiful wonderland, but there's nightmares to this. You can't
Yeah.
take this guy at face value because
Yeah.
he'll snap. You know,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
makes you wonder what Gene Wilder would be like as a Joker now.
Oh gosh, that would be so interesting, especially because his. I feel like he does a really good job, even in Willy Wonka, but more like starkly in what is that one film that he was in? It was black and white. It's like Dr. Frankenstein or something.
Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein, where it's this like element of like it is equal parts cool, calm, and collected, and erratic, and like
Yeah.
it's unpredictable, and the unpredictability of how he can play unpredictability is really impressive because it is so like it truly is unpredictable. It's hard to be able to say like, oh, this is where he's gonna go this time. Nope, he did something completely different. It's amazing. He's just amazing.
It's pronounced
Oh,
Frankenstein. Yes, Henry. It's pronounced
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Sorry. You're
Would
right.
you
You're
like
right.
to go for a rot in the hair? Like in the
Yeah.
most stereotypical German voice. Would you like to go in the rot in the hair? Like, you know.
I love. Yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah,
Yeah.
the darkness that is in apparently Roald Dahl actually wrote the script to this movie.
Oh,
So
did he?
with him also being the writer of the actual book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he wrote the script, but David Setzler was came in uncredited for rewrites. So it kind of like makes you wonder. But this guy, he did like the Omen, the original Omen. So yeah, to think this
Oh.
dude that wrote Charlie and Chocolate Factory, and he's all like, I also wrote the Omen. I wrote Prophecy, which is the I think you'll like that one. That one is a monster movie about this
Oh.
company that has been dumping chemicals into the forest, and these bears are being mutilated by mercury poisoning. And practically, there's
Whoa.
one bear that's practically it's in pain. It's only acting out because it's in pain,
Oh.
and someone
Yeah.
is in its property, um, and getting bless you and is getting near its babies, and so like any mother bear it goes violent.
Oh. Yep.
He did 6 weeks, which is a Dudley Moore and Mary Tyler Moore movie. My
Holy
Giant,
shit.
he does like a whole bunch of really big ones. Dragonfly with Kevin Costner, Bird on a Wire. He's written all of
Mm-hmm.
these wonderful films, and to think Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was what broke him in as an uncredited role, but is now known and everything for that. There is so much. There's so many layers uh, to this film that you can analyze it from a Gene Wilder perspective. You can analyze it from a Roland Dahl perspective,
Mm-hmm.
from Mel Stewart,
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
screenwriters. This is the thing that I very much miss about a lot of old school filmmaking is you don't just have a film and it's just a film. It's like, no, you pick a strand and it will
Mm-hmm.
lead you down a rabbit hole of mystery and wonder.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know, you don't see that. You see it sometimes here, but it's not quite as frequent as what it is back then. That, like,
Yeah.
the guy that wrote The Exorcist also was the screenwriter for the Pink Panther movies,
Oh, incredible.
and you could tell by the
Incredible. And
dialogue.
it's what makes me think sometimes about like the pain to pleasure threshold, and like that very fine line within like the biological body of like pain and pleasure being just so like close to one another. It almost can sometimes be like a little bit tricky to discern between what is pain and what is pleasure. And I think about that, if I extrapolate that into just writing and storytelling, like we have this wealth of experience, and we are multifaceted beings with equal parts brilliant, wonderful, beautiful, amazing experiences, but also really horrific and traumatic experiences. And sometimes that fine line is walked by these writers, where it's like, I can write a child's book, or like, a child's story about something, but I can also have this really dark and terrible history behind me that
Hmm.
is, there's no necessarily like right or wrong. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or anything, but like there's just these elements that make people multifaceted. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I know I mentioned to you is that, Roald Dahl, I would never know how to pronounce his name properly, but he had those speculations and those controversies that he was like an anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And like, but he then writes these stories that, if you look at it through the lens of him, and if he is anti-Semitic, like, how much of that influenced some of his writings? What does that look like on like a more political / cultural perspective? But it's just, I agree with you. Films have, especially these like older films that we're kind of like touching on, they just have this like this capacity to look at it at all different angles, from all different perspectives, and sort of
Hmm.
get a better read of what the entire story is altogether.
Yeah. Um, but we're gonna wrap up Willy Wonka with final thoughts from Nikki.
Watch
What are
it.
your
It's
watch it?
amazing.
You can watch it on
And yeah,
HBO Max right now. It's on HBO Max.
yeah, yeah. And stay. We are the dreamer of. We are the music makers, and we are the dreamer of dreams. Never forget. Never forget, everybody. Hashtag.
Never.
That's a quote from the movie.
Outside of Willy Wonka, what is your other favorite Gene Wilder films that you would offer for someone that has not seen Gene Wilder before? What are some other films you would?
Honestly, I have not watched a lot of his stuff. I know a lot about him, but I haven't actually watched all of the films. I would venture to say Young Frankenstein is one of those other ones that Willy Wonka shows this more toned down, but still like Gene Wilder-esque character. I think Young Frankenstein shows more of his like comedic sort of like, I'm an adult, I have experiences, I'm a man, and like he can like play into that really well. And I think that those two movies can be a fun way to like see his dichotomy to some degree.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would venture to say that's a good place to start as well.
I would
Frankenstein.
I would definitely like to say, for a lot of our listeners that are mostly adults, I don't really know any child that actually is watching my podcast, and it's all like, now I know what movies I watch. But from a lot of Gene Wilder stuff that I would definitely love you to try out, is mostly from the Mel Brooks collaboratives that he's done with the producers, Blazing
Mm.
Saddles, Young Frankenstein. Um, to definitely check those out. There's also another one he did with his wife Gilda Radner. Uh, it's a guilty pleasure film. I'm trying to find it. It was towards the end. I actually have it on DVD. It's called The Haunted Honeymooners,
Oh, what? That sounds fun.
and they are both Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner, who are husband and wife already at this point in their life. They play husband and wife in the story, and they kind of work almost like an RKO radio theater. So it's like
Mm.
that era. And
So cool.
Gene Wilder has these terrible night terrors, and he'll just wake up screaming and everything.
Oh
And
God.
so they're trying to fix him of it. Well, you end up hearing that there has been a death in the family, so he goes
Mm.
back home. There's supposedly a werewolf on the loose, but also too, Gilda Radner is also trying to help her husband Gene get over whatever is terrorizing him, and maybe going back home and maybe trying to fix some stuff with family would help him. And it's some of the most hilarious freaking comedy. It also stars Dom DeLuise and Jonathan Pryce as well. Um,
So fun.
a wonderful, wonderful film. It does not get a lot of um a lot of love. But this film represents the last feature film appearance of Gilda Radner prior to her diagnosis and death with ovarian cancer. And this was the
Oh,
last directorial role from Gene Wilder, because Gene did direct this. He directed, he wrote it with Terrence Marsh, and yeah, they had this made. It's a very, very
that's
fun.
awesome.
If you also kind of like Clue, it also kind of plays a little bit on maybe some of that Clue
Ooh,
humor.
love it.
It plays a little bit of like the who done it, someone was murdered, who did it, oh my god. But
Yeah.
they add a lot of tongue in cheek to it. It's freaking wonderful. We're opening
Awesome.
up the chat now for our Q&A, so any questions you have for the oh so wonderful NikkiHurray, drop them down here and we will read a couple of those
Woo.
questions off for Nikki.
Woo. I appreciate you bringing me on. This was so much fun. I love sharing my favorite films.
Right? Like I was like
Yeah.
over here like Nikki's high energy. We're gonna have a good day. We're gonna have a good recording.
Yeah.
And I'm like over here. It's like when I asked you, I was all like,
Mhm.
I wonder, like, what are these films? And it was sad that it took me this week before I kind of started realizing when I was watching these. I was like, this is not kind of like a fantasy episode like what I did with Birdie at the beginning of the season, but like it expands on that with pure imagination. And these are
Mm,
pure imaginative films that are just absolutely wonderful and breathtaking to look at and to
mhm.
experience. Probably like the closest thing that I would probably ever experience at Disney World is Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
one thing that I can view. It's like you can see the terror in the rides, but also the funness of all, like, anything can happen in this magical world. It's
Yeah.
like Disneyland. It's Disneyland for poor people if you can't afford
Yeah.
if you can't afford it.
Yeah. Do
Um
you I have a question for you. Do you when you watched The Fall, um did you uh like did you see all of the kind of like correlations from the young girl's kind of way of viewing life and how that
yeah,
like like even to the
when
extent of
with like the African slave, and then it was the guy that was like carrying the ice and telling her to stop licking the
yes,
ice and everything, and how,
yes,
yeah, when you mentioned earlier where it was like, oh, like he was an Indian and she's thinking not Native American, she's thinking,
yeah,
the Indians from India and
yeah,
everything, and all of that. And like I'm like looking, I was like, that guy looks familiar. And it took me a moment before I realized
yeah,
she is self-casting this film in her mind, this motion
yeah.
picture, and she's putting in these people that are around her. Which I
Even
do gotta
the
sit there and say,
even
where is her parents? It's like you don't.
so yeah.
It's like you figure your child's in the hospital. Where the fuck is your goddamn parents?
So I have two thoughts again. The first thought is her parents being what I would assume is immigrants to the Americas. You have that moment where her mom comes in and she's communicating what her mom is basically saying because she's learned English, and her
Mm-hmm.
mom is like, we don't know what her mom says because the young girl doesn't communicate that to us. But what she communicates to us is that um, the mom understands that the doctor doesn't think the kind of labor, the reason why she hurt herself and the kind of labor that she's doing is appropriate for kids. But she's like, it's almost like she knows her family, this is all her family can do. This is what her
Yeah,
family knows, this is all her family can do. And so she's going to be this throughway, but it's almost like she has to grow up in these moments to
yeah,
be this like I'm going to tell my mom like the doctor says I'm fine and I'm healing nicely, and I'm going to tell the doctor, she understands and she'll try to do better. And like she has to kind of like maintain that
yeah,
throughout. And so that's one thought. But then the second thought is I thought it was really interesting that towards the end, when the young girl hurts herself, she falls and she hits her head and like she's having to get surgery, the sound she's hearing and the way it kind of like becomes demonstrated on screen, it like takes on an entirely different medium. And
yeah,
I thought that that was fascinating because the entire movie you're kind of going through and it's all, real actors and practical effects. And then all of a sudden you get like stop motion and you're getting these like flashes of things because this is what this young girl is interpreting. And you really get at the very end this idea of like, or did you rather get at the very end that this is how she is the one who's really steering the story, even though Lee Pace was
yeah.
telling it.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that kind of already gets put in there whenever he tells her to close her eyes and ask her what she see, and she says, "I see
True.
nothing."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Rub your eyes." And of course, this poor girl, she's like, with one arm and a cast, she does it,
I
and it's like,
know.
now you see the stars, and then bam, you see
Yeah.
how she
Yeah.
views the stars. And I kind of almost like, I kind of wanted to maybe see if I could get some of
Yeah.
that magic. It leaves you kind of like
Yeah.
open of like, do I see stars? And you see the little flashes,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I like that. It's a very childish kind of thing to uh what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit of a like childish thought for it, but it works. It works for that
Yeah.
situation in which she is. And yeah,
Yeah.
everything afterwards, it's like this is all her perspective. Even though he's the
I
narrator,
love it.
and it's the collaborative
Yeah.
effort again. It's like
Yeah.
he's the screenwriter almost in a sense, and she is the director and cinematographer. And that
Yeah.
that that is how
Oh,
she views every single bit of that.
that's
Um
so true.
I haven't picked up any other questions. So my other one would be, are there any films coming out pretty soon that you're interested in seeing? Is there any modern
Uh,
films?
Admittedly, no. I am not super well versed in the film, like what's happening in the film world right now. I think the one film that I am looking for and I really want to see is Nosferatu. I desperately want to watch that film because I just, from what I've heard, from how much I love movies that really make me like feel things and like evoke really strong visceral emotions out of me, like I'm just really looking forward to that. So yeah.
Well, if you love Nosferatu, I have quite the list of films for you. And if you still love Charlie
Yeah.
Chaplin, I have like a whole list. I even have a book, the one that I
Yeah.
got from Barnes and Noble. It's kind of like it's the most authentic biography of Chaplin. And there are moments of this
That's
book that
awesome.
I've read and I'm in glee because I know exactly what they're talking about in this time
Mhm.
period when he starts working on the films. But then when you start really seeing the negative connotations of when he went to
Yeah.
go promote a film overseas, um, this is probably pushing into the 50s by now
Mhm.
because he was the only one still making silent pictures, and he finally gave in, and he did this one talkie. um he ended up getting a telegraph message from one person saying, you are not to return to the United States, you have been exiled in a sense.
Oh,
and
right.
and
Yeah.
he gets that letter with his wife there, and I think they only had one of their kids with them, but all the other kids were still
Yeah.
back home in
Oh my
Los
God.
Angeles.
Yeah.
So he had to
Yeah.
leave some of his other kids behind, and he had the resources that those kids were going to be taken care of by,
Yeah.
by the neighbors and everything. But to like sit there and get a telegraph, it's like, God, I haven't been to Britain in so long. I don't know if they're really going to accept me because I abandoned them and I came to America, but I didn't
Yeah.
really become an American because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not like an American. I am just a British man that came over here.
Yeah.
And to just kind of get that message of like, wow, like I lost almost everything. And of course this whole damn time while he's over here trying to promote a film, he's like, I need to find a home for where my family is. And
Yeah.
Chaplin is a really really good film starring Robert Downey Jr. That goes through
Oh.
his, like, they hit like all the big milestones, and his daughter, Charlie Chaplin's daughter, actually
Mhm.
plays Chaplin's mother, who uh, had a bout, I believe, with syphilis, and
Oh.
she was constantly sent into the mental ward because of it, because
Oh gosh.
she was talking to herself and seeing things that weren't there,
Yeah.
and it was the syphilis. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
even reading in the book, it's got to be one of the most heartbreaking things ever of learning of Charlie has made enough money to bring his mom over, and all he did was just give her a house by the sea away from his family. And he always wanted to do well by his mother and take care of
Mm.
her, but because of her state, it was all like, I just took her out of one exile and put her in another. And
Oh.
you get that in the book and in the film that Charlie's not proud of it,
Mm.
and he would do anything. And I think if he would have had a chance, he would do it all differently with her, to make sure
Mm.
that she's more closer to the kids and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that's another one that I offer. We are gonna wrap it
Yeah.
up here though,
Let's do
folks, and
it.
everything. Nikki, where can the kind people find you here at the socials?
Yeah, I go by NikkiHurray on almost every platform. Instagram, I use NikkiHurray_ directly after the Y. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitch and Instagram and YouTube. So you can find me there. And I have a TikTok, or pardon me, I have a TikTok, yes, but I have a Twitter. I just don't, I'm trying not to use it as much, but I am on there as well. So yeah.
Understandable and everything. Thank you guys again all for listening. Next Sunday, for our recording, we're gonna have Warbler on board. And since we did mention Gene Wilder, we are gonna sit there and talk about another Gene Wilder epic of See No Evil, Speak No Evil. No,
Ooh.
Hear No Evil, See No Evil. That's what it is and everything, which is a wonderful 1989 film with Gene Wilder co-starring alongside Richard Pryor. So if you definitely love some unfiltered fucking comedy, that's definitely one of the best ones for you guys to watch and everything. Krypton's episode is going to release tomorrow at 7 a.m. in the morning. All of our episodes that finally hit YouTube, they will they drop like the next day after, like in each interview at 7 in the morning. Socials, you can find me at the Gothic Storyteller on Instagram, Twitch, James Howe on Letterbox. Get a Letterbox. The way Nikki was talking about these films today, she needs to get a Letterbox and write those thoughts and reviews down on
Ooh.
there. It's like a cinephile social media thing, but like it doesn't act like most normal social media. It's like you go there, you put what's your favorite films, and you practically kind of like make like a film diary and everything. So every
That's
film that you
fun.
watch, it takes stabs, and you get like every month you get like, oh, this is everything that you watched and everything, kind of like rushes or whatnot. And then
Yeah.
of course they do like the end of the year thing where it's like, you've watched this many films, and I think I've watched like
Yeah.
over 100. I've watched over 100 last year.
Holy
100 films.
cow.
Yeah, well,
That's
it
amazing.
contributed because I used to do my Friday night movies and I do double features,
Oh,
and
true.
so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like for like half a year I did that, and then I stopped and everything. I got to pick back on it
Yeah.
again. And
Hell
also
yeah.
thank you guys so much again for the support. Ko-fi, definitely
Yay.
sit there and subscribe to my Ko-fi. You will get
Mhm.
these episodes a week before they release onto YouTube and everything. So again, thank you to all my Ko-fi supporters out there. Your support helps push that I can at least hopefully upgrade, the show, maybe get a maybe hire an editor finally and everything, so then I don't have to do all this editing and I
Woo.
can work on other fantastical projects. Keep watching movies, folks, and keep your imagination alive. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.